This was pretty much the worst case scenario for the Celtics because not only do they get eliminated before even the finals, which seemed like a decent lock after the Cavs were eliminated, they lose Tatum for very much of next year as well, which is so tragic to see. You hate to see that for anybody, but especially Tatum, who genuinely seems like a good guy. So that is brutal, and that is very much going to leak into next season. And it gave them no chance to come back from an already difficult situation against the Knicks. So, injury wise, of course, Tatum gets hurt at the end of game four. Looked like they were going down 3-1 anyways. That solidified, though, that they just didn't stand a real chance. And also, Kristaps Porzingis, though he played, he was not anywhere near the same. He was abysmal, in fact. And that is largely due to the illness he was experiencing, I would imagine, because his fall off was so immense. So, compared to the Knicks, who had no one injured, that was a big deal. It's very disappointing for the Celtics to struggle as much as they did against the Knicks, even with Tatum, because they had the best point differential per 100 versus top 10 teams in point differential. They were positive 7.9. The Knicks, conversely, were minus 5.5, so they were 12th in those games. So that's really, a very startling difference. The Celtics were better on offense and defense in those situations. They relied less on transition, which is more of a reliable source of offense come the playoffs to not rely on transition points because teams actually get back and try. So it seemed like the Celtics were set up. You have the best player in the series with Tatum. You have a great, great, great supporting cast as well. But it just didn't work out that way. And lazy people will say that, it was just a problem with the threes. They shot too many threes. I'm fine with the threes. I think they could have done more drive and kick into the threes, but getting up all those threes is not an issue. It got them a championship last year where they were completely dominant throughout the playoffs, and also it made them heavy favorites to come out of the East at the very least this season. So it was sticking to what has worked for them, and it's sticking to what the analytics would suggest is a good method. Like I said, they could have done more than just getting up threes early on in the shot clock like they did sometimes. They could have done more driving, but just the threes in a vacuum are not a problem because, particularly, they shot the exact same percentage as the Knicks. And you might want to say, well, that's not great because the Knicks aren't as good at shooting the three as the Celtics, so that's a sign that the Celtics weren't, hitting their shots like they should have. But still, that was even. The difference was not the threes. It was the overall efficiency of basically everybody. Derek White was really the bright spot for the Celtics. He was super efficient, gave you 20 points as well. And Peyton Pritchard was efficient with his 59% true shooting. White was 63% true shooting on, again, 20 points. Pritchard gave you 14. That was basically the extent of it. You got efficiency from Drew Holiday and Al Horford, but they gave you 9 points each. So that's not too much of an impact. The problem was, even when Tatum was playing, he wasn't playing at his best. He was the best for the Celtics, but that was because Kristaps Porzingis, who I think is actually their second best player, not Jaylen Brown, he definitely wasn't in this playoff series. But I think in general, Porzingis is. He's much more efficient, even relative to his position. He has more impact on defense as a switchable paint protecting big than Brown, who's just good on ball, not even good off ball. And Porzingis doesn't kill their spacing. He's actually a great three-point shooter, whereas Brown is terrible from three. So I think Porzingis is their number two, and he was just genuinely awful. One of the worst performances you'll ever see for basically any player in the NBA. He gave 4 points on 39% true shooting. For a big man, you're looking for about 61% true shooting. So, just a casual 22 percentage point difference. On the bright side, he did give 2 offensive rebounds, but that doesn't make things right even a little bit, especially because he had an almost 2-to-1 turnover to assist ratio. As for Tatum, like I said, it wasn't his best performance, but he still gave 25 points. It wasn't efficient because for a non-center, you're expecting about 57% true shooting. He was at 52%, so that's rather inefficient. He also wasn't too much of a playmaker. He had 22 assists to 15 turnovers. So he wasn't great at getting others involved either, but others weren't making shots. So that's partly to blame. The thing that's so disappointing about this, though, is that in addition to just being the better team than the Knicks, which I will stand by even though they got handled even when Tatum was playing, the Knicks didn't have great performances either. Jalen Brunson was contained. He still gave you 26 points on fine efficiency, but that's not like a monster performance by any stretch. Tatum could have very easily outperformed that if he just played at his normal level. And Towns didn't play particularly well. He wasn't efficient. He only gave 20 points. So Towns and Brunson, the two things that make the Knicks offense work, they were contained. It wasn't an issue, again, of the Celtics defense. They just were not making shots for the basically entirety of the series. Jaylen Brown was bad, not nearly as bad as Porzingis. No one in this playoffs, I think, has been as bad as Porzingis was. I do want to be clear about that. Brown, 21 points, which is just one less than he averaged in the regular season. But Brown's already a little bit inefficient at 56% true shooting. He was at 50% for the series. That is brutal. And he was, just slightly positive for assist to turnovers, 31 assists to 23 turnovers. That's not a great ratio. It's just so disappointing for the Celtics because they did have some bright spots. Like I said, Derek White was amazing. He might have been, their best player throughout this series when you consider that Tatum missed the final 2 games. And I love Derek White. I think he's one of the absolute best role players in the league. But notice I said role players. So that is problematic when he might be your best guy. And it's really problematic too because, he's playing the great defense as well. So he should have a little bit less responsibility on offense. But that just wasn't the case. He was the only guy that could make his shot at a consistent clip for, an appreciable amount of points. Like I said, Holiday and Horford were both efficient as well. But when you're only giving 9 points, White's giving you more than double that. White's definitely contributing a whole lot more. So this is very disappointing. You can point to the Tatum injury as, the nail in the coffin, but things are already pretty unfortunate for the Celtics being down, likely 3-1, even without the injury to Tatum. And it's not, as simple as you got to fire Missoula and, get a real coach in there that doesn't like threes and analytics. That wasn't, their doom. They just didn't make any shots, basically, as a whole. And their defense was still good. Like I said, basically nobody for the Knicks went off. Like Josh Hart was probably their best player compared to expectation with his 15 points on 59% true shooting. 3 offensive rebounds a game. That was super problematic for the Celtics. It was a bit surprising how dominant the Knicks were on the glass because Mitchell Robinson, Hart and Robinson are both great rebounders, especially for their positions. But Robinson got 4 offensive rebounds a game on limited time, and Hart gave you 3. That's just unacceptable. The Celtics had to do better on the glass than that. The Celtics were getting offensive rebounds of their own. Basically everybody aside from Tatum was averaging 1 or more a game for the Celtics, but that's just really rough. I will say too, just for the Knicks side of things, Deuce McBride had a very good series, 8 points, but 71% true shooting and 6 assists to 1 turnover. He was great in limited minutes. So that was something that worked against the Celtics. But, you know, Peyton Pritchard giving you double the points almost. It's not like, the Celtics bench was just completely outclassed. This was, a failing from mostly the entire top of the Celtics. And I think it's pretty much as simple as that. And it's unfortunate to see that next season is likely going to be derailed to a heavy degree because of this just unfortunate Tatum injury. Those are my thoughts on the 2025 Celtics. Be sure to let me know what yours are in the comment section. Also, be sure to like and subscribe for more basketball and football content. Also, if I had to give grades for the season for them, I would give their regular season an A. I don't know if I would give them an A plus because I think this is, it's on a curve sort of where, you know, if you look at things in absolute terms, it's an A plus because they were, you know, up there with the very best teams in the entire league. But that was expected of them. I don't think they did anything that was beyond expectation. They have just a great team like that. And for the postseason, I guess I would give it like a D because sure they handled business fine in round 1, but against the Knicks, they were not good. You do obviously point to the Tatum injury, but like I said, things were pretty bleak even before then.